Good morning. I like that. Good morning. All right, that's good. I'm Joe Colella. I'm the Director of Child Passenger Safety for the Juvenile Products Manufacturers Association. I'm also a member of the Planning Committee for Lifesavers and co-chair of the Child Passenger Safety track here. And I'm so honored to be able to greet you first thing this morning. On behalf of the Lifesavers Board and the Planning Committee, I'd like to welcome you to the annual Lifesavers Conference on Highway Safety Priorities as we celebrate our 41 years in providing an exchange of strategies, best practices to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roadways. We're so happy to have you here in person with us again this year. And also, we have a lot of people joining us online. We're live streaming this session. So welcome to you as well. We appreciate you being here. And like I said, I'm honored to serve here as the opening plenary speaker. This is actually my 28th Lifesavers. My first Lifesavers, my first Lifesavers was in 1995 when I was just a young guy. I know I don't look much older than that right now, but it was actually in 1995, and I only missed one in the last few decades. So I'm excited to be here. I have a few housekeeping notes to share before we get started. Number one, please take a moment to locate the nearest exit in the ballroom. Also, be sure to review the Hyatt Hotel's emergency plan, which can be found on the Lifesavers mobile app. In the event of an emergency, please follow the directions of the staff here. And if you see anything anything suspicious, please report it to a hotel staff member or one of the Washington Traffic Safety Commission volunteers. Finally, if you haven't done so already, be sure to locate your hotel's emergency exits in your hotel and review the action plans as well. You know, we are Lifesavers. We need to stay safe, so that's really important to us. Now, let's officially kick off the 41st Annual Lifesavers Conference. If everybody can please rise. I'd like to welcome the Washington Highway Patrol Honor Guard, Detail Officer Sergeant James McGuire, Color Guard members Sergeant William Rutherford, Trooper Heather Axman, Trooper Kyle Flagg, and Trooper Dean Gallinger to present our nation's colors. Please join me in thanking, a little ahead of time. Now we're going to hear the national anthem from Mark Medellin and Angie Ward.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please join me in thanking Mark Medellin and Angie Ward and the Washington Highway Patrol Honor Guard.
Ceremonial of peace. Ready, up, seat. Just, cut. Honor guard, present, arms. Order, arms. Ready, post. Forward, march.
I think everyone in this room can agree that the Lifesavers Conference is more important now than ever before. Traffic deaths in the United States have reached levels not seen in more than a decade. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that 42,915 people died in motor vehicle crashes in 2021. That's a 10.5% increase over the 38,824 in 2020. In 2021, this is not the good news part of this session. In 2021, when compared to 2020, we saw fatalities on urban roads up 16%. Fatalities among drivers 65 and older up 14%. Pedestrian fatalities up 13%. Daytime fatalities up 11%. Motorcyclist fatalities up 9%. Bicyclist fatalities up 5%. Fatalities involving speeding-related crashes up 5%. And fatalities in police-reported alcohol impairment crashes up 5%. That is not a good thing. Early estimates for 2022 do not look much better. We have our work cut out for us, folks. This is why we're here. For the next 3 days, we as traffic safety professionals from across the globe, welcome from all over the place, gather here in Seattle to focus on strategies for bringing those staggering numbers down by sharing our ideas, our knowledge, our experience, and taking what we learn here to implement proven countermeasures and programs to our local communities to save lives and prevent serious injuries. At the heart of the conference this year, we can work together toward a safe system approach, and we have a lot to learn from our host city, Seattle, and the state of Washington. We're leading the way to implementing proven programs that center on the safe system strategies. The safe system approach, which was recently adopted by the U.S. Department of Transportation, is a holistic approach to managing safety, preventing crashes and injuries, and saving lives and a guiding paradigm for addressing the crisis on our roads. At its most basic, the safe system approach acknowledges that humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable, and death and serious injuries are unacceptable. In this framework, redundancy is the key to safety. Safety is proactive, and responsibility is shared. By addressing the 5 elements of the safe system, which are safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and post-crash care, we can reduce death and serious injuries on our roads. In 2022, Seattle received the National Center for Safe Routes to School Vision Zero for Youth Award for its exceptional commitment to safe walking and biking for the city's children and youth. The Vision Zero for Youth Leadership Awards recognize communities that have taken bold steps to reach zero pedestrian and bicyclist serious injuries and deaths among children and youth. And the goal is to inspire other communities to act. The award recognizes places in the United States that are leading the way, like here in Seattle, in prioritizing pedestrian and bicyclist safety for children and youth, where the risk is greatest. Join me in congratulating Seattle on this achievement. We are all here to hear from experts in the field and to network and find new program and countermeasures to address the loss of life in our communities. We also have a lot to celebrate. We have the numbers that I just mentioned to remind us of why we all do what we do on a daily basis. But what we don't have is the number of people, all of the lives that have been saved thanks to our tireless efforts and the dedicated people in this room. I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize one of the dedicated groups of Lifesavers among us, a group that I'm proud to be a part of, our child passenger safety technician and instructor community. Just give us an idea. How many certified child passenger safety technicians and instructors are in the room right now? Wow, that is a big group. Okay. And I'm proud to be part of it, really am. Have been for a long, long time. Thank you for your passion and your commitment to helping families and empowering families and caregivers to keep their kids safe on the road. Let's give the child passenger safety technicians a hand. If you take a look at the big screens, where's the big screen? There's the big screens. The 2023 National Child Passenger Safety Award winners are shown, and they've been recognized by the National Child Passenger Safety Board. We all believe in celebrating safety, and we have a lot to celebrate today because so many in the child passenger safety community continue to prioritize the transportation safety of children. In doing so, they commit to making a difference in the lives of others. Okay, in alphabetical, I'm sorry. First of all, we want to recognize the National Team of the Year, all the way to your left, and that is the Nebraska Child Passenger Safety Advisory Committee. A fantastic group. Who's here from Nebraska? Okay, fantastic group of people. I've had the opportunity to work with them over the years, and the committee is made up of 22 members that try to make sure that kids are safe on Nebraska roads. Next, I want to introduce the National Instructor of the Year Award, and because of a dead heat in the scoring of the nominations, we actually have 2 Instructors of the Year, and I'm going to talk to you in alphabetical order to recognize the 2 incredible winners. So in alphabetical order, the first is Claire Fotenhauer. of Lamont, Illinois. She's one of 2 recipients of the National Instructor of the Year Award. And her equal in the award, the National Instructor of the Year Award, is Claudia Summers from Waxhaw, North Carolina. Also Instructor of the Year. Okay, we also have the Technician of the Year, Victoria Chandler from Wichita, Kansas. And I'm excited that in 3 weeks I get to go to Wichita, Kansas and talk to their technicians. Congratulations to all of the winners from the National Child Passenger Safety Board. If you'd like to find out more about the awards, and I encourage you to do so, you can visit cpsboard.org/awards to learn about the process and the awards and how that happens. And you can start thinking about who you would like to nominate from your community in 2024. Also, I'd like to mention that the Manufacturers Alliance for Child Passenger Safety, many of whom you'll meet, these are manufacturers that are committed to child passenger safety and making a difference as advocates. They just announced their Child Passenger Safety Hall of Fame inductees for 2022. All inductees have been involved in child passenger safety professionally for at least 20 years, and they've made a genuine contribution to the reduction of childhood injuries and deaths as a result of motor vehicle crashes nationally, regionally, and locally. In 2022, the inductees are Alan Buchanan from North Carolina, Dr. Charles Kahane from Maryland, Cheryl Kim from California, Dr. Dennis Durbin from Ohio, Dr. Flora Winston from Pennsylvania, Sherry Cannon from Kansas, Steve Ager from Maryland, and Suzanne Tilko, one of the leading researchers in Canada. Now, all of these folks are really legacy people that have made a difference and laid a foundation for what we do here today. So fantastic people. Please join me in congratulating all of the awardees from both groups. The Lifesavers Conference is a nonprofit entity that would not happen without the support of our sponsors and our exhibitors. Our sponsors were displayed on the screens, the video screens, when you entered the room this morning. And Lifesavers thanks these businesses and organizations for their support and their commitment to saving lives. Please join me in giving the sponsors and our supportive exhibitors also the well-deserved round of applause. They really make a difference to us. And now we'll move on to the next steps, the actual conference part. Isn't it great to be here in person in Seattle, sunny Seattle? Now, it's not sunny this morning, but did anybody see the sun yesterday? It was great. It was fantastic. We're so excited to be back in Seattle. I was here the last time we were in Seattle. God, I think that was over 20 years ago. And I can assure you that you're going to have a great time exploring all that Seattle has to offer. To officially welcome us to this great city, we have Governor Jay Inslee. Jay Inslee is a fifth-generation Washingtonian who's lived on both sides of the states and worked on both sides of the states. He first became involved in public service in 1985 when he and Trudy helped to lead the effort to build a new public high school in Sela. Motivated to fight against the proposed funding cuts for rural schools, Jay went on to represent the 14th legislative district in the State House of Representatives. He was then elected to Congress in 1992. The Inslees later moved back to Kitsap County, where Jay was elected to Congress in 1998, until serving as governor beginning in 2012 when he was elected. He is currently the longest-serving governor in the United States of America. As governor, he's helped to put Washington State at the forefront of climate action, and is helping lead numerous subnational partnerships. Since 2013, the state has passed nation-leading policies that transition to 100% clean electricity, that cap carbon pollution, and that electrify transportation, and more. And now a message from Governor Inslee.
Hi everyone, Governor Inslee here. Welcome to a beautiful day in Seattle and the 2023 Lifesavers Conference. First responders, advocates, urban planners, engineers, we know you each save lives in your own way. But when we work together as you are today, we can save even more. You know, I know you share this news of knowing that our traffic death count has gone up, and the people who we've lost are not numbers, they're our families. And we know behind that number are personal stories of loss. So we are all demanding action. We all want to join for a call to action this session, and I'm pleased by the progress of bills to install speed cameras in work zones and to require young drivers to complete driver's ed. These traffic deaths are preventable. Impaired driving is preventable. Distracted driving is preventable. So we know traffic safety is a top priority for us. I know you're committing your professional and personal lives to this. I know there are people going home to their families because of your hard work. So let's keep this ball rolling. Thanks and good luck to us all.
Thank you, Governor Inslee, for prioritizing this and for sharing your remarks with us this morning. He couldn't be here in person, but he prioritized it enough to make that special video for us and call our attention to it. I'd now like to introduce Shelly Baldwin, who's the director of the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. Governor Jay Inslee, who we just met, appointed Shelly Baldwin as director of the Washington Traffic Safety Commission back in February of 2021. Ms. Baldwin is the first woman to serve as director of the WTSC since it was founded in 1967. Yep, that deserves a round of applause in itself. Shelly's traffic safety advocacy started more than 25 years ago. Highlights of her career include building a statewide stakeholder group to focus on impaired driving and helping to strengthen the state's policies on distracted driving, ignition interlock, impaired driving, and walker and roller safety. She's also led the agency in adopting a proactive traffic safety culture and establishing the agency's pro-equity anti-racism team. Having worked directly with crash survivors and families of traffic crash victims, Ms. Baldwin understands deeply the importance of our work. Her personal commitment to service aligns perfectly with the WTSC's vision of zero traffic deaths and serious injuries. Please welcome Washington Traffic Safety Commission Director Shelly Baldwin. Shelly? All
right, good morning. Good morning. Wake you all up. Thank you. As director of the Governor's Highway Safety Office here in Washington, I am privileged and honored to welcome you to Seattle, a Vision Zero city. We heard a little bit about awards that Seattle's won, but I just wanted to take a minute to talk about what Seattle Vision Zero program did for their speed limits. In 2016, they lowered their speed limits in cities and neighborhoods from 25 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour. And just last week, the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety released a study that showed that speed limit change meant crashes on Seattle streets were less likely to cause injury. And that's a pretty big win in my book. Also, Washington State has been a Target Zero state since 2000. So we are visionary. As Joe mentioned, we're gathered today at a very critical time. Like many states, Washington has experienced a heartbreaking increase in traffic deaths. In fact, 2022 saw numbers that we haven't seen in 3 decades. The headlines have put a spotlight on traffic safety professionals like us. As one of my commissioners said to me, this is a crisis. What are we going to be doing differently? So this conference comes at the right time. There are over 1,500 people, yay, thanks for all coming, dedicated to making the necessary changes to ensure that no one loses their life just because they're trying to get from one place to the next. This room is packed with experience and wisdom and passion. If you reach out, I bet you can find a fresh perspective on your current challenge. So please connect with each other, meet someone new. I believe that we can also find fresh perspectives by listening to the voices of our communities. We will benefit from bringing those new voices to our planning and our actions and by focusing our work around equity. We need everyone to know that traffic deaths and serious injuries are unacceptable, and we need everyone to act in order to reach our goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. Now is the time to allow the safe system approach to retool our thinking. And fortunately, this conference has an entire track dedicated to safe systems. And I'm not just saying that because I'm monitoring one of the workshops, but I will tell you that you're going to have fun if you come. The spotlight that we're under, it has spurred some thoughtful conversations in Washington around policy. As you heard the governor say, we've been talking about the use of speed safety cameras in highway work zones. In fact, we anticipate the governor will be signing that into law next week. It's so important that we protect those roadway workers who are building the safer roads for us. He also mentioned that we were working on driver's ed, and so the bill that's still making its way through and is getting near the end, cross your fingers for us, would require 18 to 20-year-olds to take the same driver's education course that's now required for 16 to 17-year-olds. And also, 21 to 24-year-olds would need to take an abbreviated course. It'll be phased in over a few years, and that's good. Give everyone a time to get used to it. But our data really shows that the 16 and 17-year-olds have half the risk of crashes and serious injuries than their counterparts from 18 to 25. It's pretty amazing data. The bill would also provide scholarships for driver's education for low-income students because we know driver's education, if it's providing this benefit, is a big equity issue because so many can't afford it. So I'm so pleased with that. Washington also had a really great conversation this year about changing the per se BAC limit from 0.08 to 0.05, like Utah did a few years ago. I am so proud to have a governor that supports this legislation, and so pleased at all of the partners, both state and national, that came to help legislators understand that 0.05 is about prevention. It doesn't have negative consequences for businesses or the justice system. It just results in fewer fatals and crashes. Unfortunately, that legislation didn't pass this year, or at least it doesn't look like it's going to. But I am confident that we will get there and that the conversation was rich and good, and it's just going to take educating a few more people. So why that hot spot, why that spotlight that we're under is pretty hot, it can also spur action and help us answer that question, what are we going to be doing differently? So I hope you reach out, get inspired, bring new ideas back home with you so that you can answer that question too. We are so excited to host you at Lifesavers in Seattle this year, and we have a small army, 51 people, but from my point, that's an army, who are here to help you. And you will know us because we are wearing these bright green lanyards. So these are the people that will help you, answer questions, point you in the right direction, tell you where to get a coffee, whatever you need. And I would like to stand up. So if you are a Washington Traffic Safety Commission staff, if you are Target Zero managers, Washington Child Passenger Safety Technicians, or any other people who helped us volunteer to work this, please stand up. Stand up, stand up. Look around, let everyone see your faces, and you will find them everywhere trying to help and monitoring workshops to make sure those go smoothly, so reach out and ask them for help. And I thank them so much for their service and all of the work that they did to bring Lifesavers to Seattle this year, and I hope you have a great conference. Thank you so much. Next, I would like to introduce one of my heroes, Washington State Patrol Chief John Batiste. John Batiste, yeah, he is one of my heroes. John Batiste is the 21st Chief of the Washington State Patrol. He was originally appointed to the position in 2005 by Governor Gregoire and reappointed in 2017 by Governor Inslee. Chief Batiste oversees the agency's 6 bureaus, commercial enforcement, field operations, fire protection, forensic laboratory services, investigative services, and technical services. And the reason he has so many is because they know if they give a job to the State Patrol, they'll get it done. The chief began his career with the Washington State Patrol in 1976. He promoted through the ranks of sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and deputy chief. He is a graduate of the Northwestern's Center for Public Safety, Police Staff and Command, and a graduate of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's National Executive Institute. Chief Batiste serves on at least a dozen executive boards and is a member of executive boards both in the state and across the nation. But the one that matters the most to me is that he is one of my commissioners at the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. And his 18 years of service to the commission, I value that so much. I value his experience, his insight, and his partnership. So please welcome Chief Batiste.
Thank you, Shelly. Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you here in our beautiful state. As Shelly mentions, I'm John Batiste. I'm the 21st Chief of the Washington State Patrol, which is a real honor and a privilege for me. Having done this now as a lead of the agency for 18 plus years, I work with some great individuals, starting with Shelly Williams, Roger Millar, who you'll hear from later, and our folks over at the Department of Licensing. Shelly, you and your staff, I thank you and congratulate you for being the host and a marvelous job. I want to welcome you to the great state of Washington. The Washington State Patrol is made up of just under 2,500 individuals. If you introduce yourself to them, let's make it legal. They're here to keep you safe, and I want to welcome you to this beautiful place. Washington State is a place that has beautiful beaches along our coastline. You can stand on any of those beaches and just about from anywhere look at snow-capped mountains. It's just a gorgeous place. We have ferries that'll take you across the Puget Sound and up to Canada. We have hunting locations, anything that you want to do in this great location. This beautiful city that you sit in is an innovative place. It's well known for aviation with Boeing. You have Intel here. You name it, it's here in the state of Washington. They're the leaders in banking and a host of other things. So I hope that you have an opportunity to get out and spend some time. If you need any assistance from us, please don't hesitate to call on us. Now I want to thank you. I want to first thank my troopers. The Honor Guard folks that you see up here, those are volunteers. They volunteer their time to represent the agency at events like this, and they perform in the highest fashion. I want to thank them for what it is that they do, because again, they spend time away from their families to practice and perform. So please give them a hand. I'm recruiting. We're shorthanded. So I'll start with the 31 award recipients. Truly innovators, folks who are doing a great job in helping us save lives and keep people safe. If you're looking for a new home, you found it. If any of you know someone that you think would make a great Washington State Patrol trooper or other employees, we're about half and half. We have about 1,200 troopers, and the remainder are civilian jobs within the agency. So lots of opportunities. We'll be happy to welcome you aboard. Go to the internet and look at our site. And you can look me up during the course of this conference. I have Assistant Chief Scott McCoy here. I have Assistant Chief Dan Atchison and a host of other folks attending this conference. Folks, over the course of the last 3 years, as it's been mentioned, it's been very difficult. With the pandemic and the problems that it's caused, we have lost quite a few folks. So we have a need to rebuild our rank. We're the youngest we've been in the history of the organization. We're just over 100 years old, and our average tenure is 13 years. Very young, exciting, but very young. So let's do what we can. For all of you who've come here from various locations, in various capacities, I thank you for what it is that you do. Seat belts, folks who are working on engineering and improvements to our highway system, law enforcement who are out there trying to do everything we can to keep folks safe, thank you. Thank you for what it is that you do. We have a tough job ahead of us, but we do tough. We do tough. You're here to share your ideas and your experience. I thank you for doing so, because it'll only make us smarter versus unnecessarily having to work harder, particularly when we're so short. We must work together. So please share your thoughtful ideas, your experiences with one another to help us grow and be able to keep one another safe throughout this beautiful country of ours. Again, I want to thank you for attending this conference. It's the largest in North America. And I also want to make sure that you enjoy your stay and be safe while you're here. So have a good time. And again, thanks for joining us in the beautiful city of Seattle and the great state of Washington. Go Cougars.
All right, thank you to Director Baldwin and Chief Batiste. They took time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. And actually, at Chief Batiste's lead, I'm going to ask all active and retired law enforcement and military to please stand up. Thank you for your service. We're so honored this morning to have a keynote speaker, Roger Millar, and he's with the Washington State Department of Transportation. He is the Secretary of Transportation for this fine state. Roger Millar joined the Washington State Department of Transportation as Deputy Secretary in October of 2015, and he was appointed Secretary of Transportation in August of 2016. He oversees an agency that is the steward of a complex multimodal transportation system. He's responsible for ensuring that people and goods move safely and efficiently across the state. Secretary Millar is a fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers and a fellow of the American Institute for Certified Planners. He is the president of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, chair of the Intelligent Transportation Society of America Board of Directors, president of the ASCE Transportation and Development Institute, and a member of the National Operations Centers of Excellence Strategic Advisory Council and the National Complete Streets Coalition Steering Committee. And now, Secretary Millar.
My wife and my mom love that intro, but it kind of embarrasses me. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Washington State. Hope you're having a good time. Hope you get a chance to go out and visit our ferry system. It's among other things, safe, or take our Amtrak Cascade system. You can go up to Vancouver, BC, down to Portland, but I'm sure the mayor and all the business people in Seattle want you to spend all your money right here in their community. I wanted to talk a little bit about where WSDOT is in the safety space, and it's great to be here with Shelly and the chief. We work together on any number of things, but the most important thing to us is making sure that our employees get home safely at the end of their shifts, and that the people of Washington State get wherever they're going safely. So there are two things I don't do as Secretary of Transportation. I do not appropriate money, and I do not set transportation policy. That's done by our legislature. And the thing that I am constantly battling is the disconnect sometimes between the policy goals we've set and where the legislature does choose to appropriate. I am a subject matter expert. I give them advice, but they get a lot of advice from a lot of people, and getting preservation and safety up to the top of the list. I've been around the agency for about 8 years now. It's taken a while, but a couple sessions ago, they took what was kind of an alphabetically ordered list and moved preservation and safety up. There are other things that the legislature directs my agency to do. We're given duties. And so when people wonder, why in the world is the secretary talking about that crazy stuff, or why can't we get a wider highway or what have you, it's because we shall do a number of things, including balancing system safety and convenience. And inconvenience is our enemy. That is the thing that stops us every time. We were making some progress on that BAC going from 0.08 to 0.05, but inconvenience was a problem. We were talking about eliminating right turn on red in a lot of situations, but inconvenience stopped us. I battle that inconvenience bugaboo all the time. So based on what the legislature has told us to do, we have a strategic plan. When I came on board, we had a strategic plan with so many goals, it was incredible, but nobody could remember what they were. I can remember 3 things on a good day. So we have 3: resilience, workforce, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to talk about resilience because that's the place where safety lives in our system. Although keeping our workforce safe is very important, and that diversity, equity, and inclusion thing, all of us should be safe in the transportation space. So a lot of times resilience is thought of as a climate change issue. I work for Governor Inslee. Climate change is right up at the top of my list, but it's not just about the climate. Resilience to us is the ability to prepare for and adapt to changing conditions and withstand and recover rapidly from disruptions. I believe the unofficial motto of our agency is, you cannot make this stuff up. The stuff that happens in the DOT space. Washington State DOT, we have the longest floating bridge in the world. We have 4 of the 5 longest floating bridges of the world. A couple of them didn't float once upon a time. We have the biggest deep bore tunnel in the world. Bertha was not boring for about 3.5 years. We have bridge strikes. We have horrific landslides. We have storms and fires. And a couple years ago, we actually had a couple dozen of our community stuck in their cars under huge piles of tumbleweeds that it took a day for our technicians to dig them out after a windstorm on the east side of the state. So we need to be ready for whatever comes our way. And to be ready, we need to have a system that is safe, and it's sound, and it's smart. So, like I said, climate change is an issue for us. Other natural and human-made disasters. We have an earthquake coming in Washington State, hopefully not while you're here. But every 300 to 900 years, our coast drops about 10 feet and moves about 30 feet west all at once. I'm sure it's an exciting ride. We are 23 years into the 300 to 900 year bubble, because the last time this happened was in 1700. We have to be ready for that as an agency. We have to be ready for knuckleheads who don't check the height of their load and take one of our bridges out. We have to be ready for cyber criminals who are looking all the time to hack our computer systems. We have to be resilient in the face of demographic change. A friend of mine who runs the Disability Mobility Initiative rightly pointed out, Anna Seibart's wonderful person, rightly pointed out that 25% of Washingtonians don't drive. They're too young, they're too old, they're not able, they're not willing, or the chief doesn't let them. But for whatever reason, they're not driving. That's 2 million people, and they are our customers too. And when you think about demographic change, one of the things I know, was when I got up this morning, I was a day older than I was yesterday, but the AARP estimates that the average American man is going to outlive his ability to drive by 7 years, and the average woman by 11. And that doesn't mean that the gentleman in the room won't still be out there driving, but the ability might not be there anymore. And that's a problem. But think about your life. How would you maintain, whether you live in an urban situation, a suburban situation, out in the woods, how do you maintain your quality of life and your independence and your dignity as a person if you can't drive? I was out last week talking to my crews in the south central part of the state, maintenance technicians, people that operate snowplows and the like, and that floored them. Oh my goodness, if I couldn't drive, 2 million and growing, they are our customers too. And as they make their way from origin to destination in the transportation system, they deserve to be safe. And the other thing we have to be resilient about is economic change. We're part of a global economy now. When we built Interstate 82 out in the eastern part of the state, the Yakima Valley, the Columbia River Valley, there was no wine business out there. It's a multi-billion-dollar business right now. Boeing goes up and down, Amazon goes up and down. Thanks to all of you, Starbucks had a good day, but we need to be responsive to our economy. So when you look at it at a national level, this is something, 43,000 people died on our highways last year. And that for each individual, each family, each friend, each coworker, each community, that was a tragedy. But when you look at what we invest in transportation versus what the cost of a lack of investment, both in policy and dollars, means, if you took all of the DOTs in the United States, there are 52 of us that belong to AASHTO, combined our budgets, it's a little under $200 billion a year. That's a lot of money. The cost of the crashes on our system last year was $1.4 trillion. 1.4 trillion. I bring up the economics. I talk about the tragedy and I talk about the economics because I know in this room, like in every room that I speak, each and every one of you knows one thing for certain. Deep down in your soul, in your heart of hearts, something that you just take for granted, and that's that you're an above average driver. And you're not going to be in a crash until it happens. But everybody can understand 1.4 trillion. That's real money. That's Defense Department level money. And look at the cost of crashes compared to the cost of congestion to the nation. And think of all the money that we chase congestion with. Look at the cost of state of good repair, the car repairs and truck repairs we do because our system is not in a state of good repair. Look at the greenhouse gas cost. But again, 1.4 trillion. Here in Washington State, it's 18.1 billion. That's a lot of dough. My budget's about $4.5 billion a year. 18.1 billion. We are one of the larger agencies of state government. We have the 4th highest gas tax in the country. Everybody in Washington not everybody, but most of them love to complain about the fact that they pay 49.4 cents a gallon in state gas tax, and so why isn't my road fixed? If we had to raise $18.1 billion a year with a gas tax in Washington State, it would be a $5.10 a gallon gas tax. That is the hidden gas tax that Washington families and Washington businesses pay because of crashes on our system. And you can see the equivalent gas tax that would be required to bring, to address state of good repair, congestion, and the like. That's a lot of money. We could spend a lot more money in the transportation world on safety and maybe come out ahead in terms of what Washington families and Washington businesses, or your community's families and your community's businesses, are spending that hidden cost today. So we do have to be responsive to and sympathetic to the incredible tragedies of the crashes, but the economic consequences need to be talked about as well. So what are we going to do about it? We are a Target Zero state, but that's nice, but inconvenience keeps getting in the way of progress towards getting to zero. We're going the wrong direction in terms of fatalities and serious injuries. In particular, we're going the wrong direction with pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities and serious injuries. So I am blessed as the Secretary of Transportation with a great team, and 3 members of my team in particular. Marshall Elizer, who's the Assistant Secretary for Multimodal Development and Delivery, has been a part of the safety space for years, and right now he is chairing the committee that is rewriting the AASHTO Green Book, and it will be different. I also have, under Marshall's leadership, Dongo Chang. Dongo's the state traffic operations engineer right now. He started at DOT, the city of Seattle, stole him away. He did some wonderful things for Seattle when he was at SDOT, so I stole him back, and now he's trying to make those wonderful things happen statewide. And then Barb Chamberlain, who manages our active transportation division, has taken us to places I never thought we would get in terms of addressing the needs of people who walk and people who bike. And that team and many others are looking at how do we solve the fact that fatal crashes are increasing statewide. It's not a city thing, it's not a rural thing. How do we solve that problem? We solve that problem by taking a multi-pronged safety approach. And I'm an infrastructure owner-operator, so I have a piece of that safe systems pie. And every time I start talking about the other pieces of that pie, I get accused of blame shifting. And let me tell you, we own the DOTs, the AASHTO world, we own our piece of this, but we need to talk about those other pieces. We're looking at safe systems approach. We're addressing speed versus safety in complete streets. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We're talking about using technology to protect all of our users. In particular here in Washington State, we've done a safety reset on work zones. Something I do control is how we address work zone safety. We stood down last year about this time with our chief engineer and our region administrators, and I told them, if it's not safe to do the work at night, don't do it during the daytime. If you would normally take a shoulder, but it's not safe, take the lane too. If you normally take the lane and it's not safe, take the road. We're going to move from avoiding inconveniencing the motorists to protecting the safety of those motorists and of the people who work in the work zone. It doesn't mean we don't still work at night, but people are going to be inconvenienced, and 90% of the folks who die in work zones are traveling public. It's not the construction workers. But I would much rather take a nastygram from an inconvenienced motorist or a legislator who doesn't like what we're doing. I'd rather take that than have to make that call to the spouse of an employee. That's the toughest thing in this job. So we are working on work zone safety. The legislature has passed our agency's request legislation for this year, which will enable the chief's team and my team to do rulemaking, to put automated speed enforcement into our work zones. So in our work zones and in our maintenance zones, there will be cameras, and you will drive the speed limit or you will get a ticket, and that ticket will be double because you were speeding in a construction zone. It's been proven to reduce crashes, and I'm looking forward to seeing it law. Anybody from NHTSA here? Anybody from FMCSA? The FMCSA is doing a rulemaking right now that would put automated speed limiters on long-haul trucks. Right on. The trucking community, I hear the arguments against it. If trucks have to drive the speed limit and cars don't, there are going to be more crashes. Now in Europe, they're putting speed limiters on passenger vehicles. That's something I would encourage my NHTSA friends to consider. It makes a difference. When we had scooters descend upon us in the cities a few years ago, nobody had any problem with putting a speed limiter on a scooter. But to my horror, Dodge is aggressively marketing a vehicle that goes 214 miles an hour. Why does anyone need a vehicle that goes 214 miles an hour off of a racetrack? Oh, the driver will drive the speed limit. Sure, yeah, sure. My 21-year-old son and his friends coming back from a party are going to drive the speed limit in a car that goes 214 miles an hour. There's another thing that I'm just aghast at when I go to Facebook and I see them advertising these things you can plug into your car, and all of a sudden your dashboard's a movie theater. Oh my goodness, why? We need to work on that kind of stuff outside of my space as an infrastructure owner and operator. When was the last time you were tested for your ability to drive? Last time for me was 1978. I wonder if anything's changed since then. I wonder if I've changed since then. There was a movement to have seniors retest, and it was shot down, I think, appropriately as age discrimination. But why not a retest if you're involved in a crash? Or you're involved in a certain number of crashes? Why not continuing education? I'm a civil engineer. I have to have continuing ed to maintain my license. I'm a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I have to have continuing education to maintain my certification. The laws change, vehicles change. There should be some requirements in that space. When I was a kid in Virginia going to school, I had to have a safety test done on my automobile every 6 months to get the tabs to drive it legally on the roads, the state's roads. They check my brakes, they check my tires, they check my windshield, they check my lights, they check my wipers, they check my exhaust system, and it was a pain in the butt, and it cost me money. But I knew that every car licensed in Virginia had good rubber and brakes that worked. You do not know that if you drive on Washington State's roads, because we have no such requirement. In fact, only 15% of the states require that. Why don't more? Because it's inconvenient. God, I have to go in, the mechanic's going to take advantage of me. People's lives are at stake, and these are things that we need to be thinking about in this broader space. And I am not shifting the blame from the DOTs and the cities and the counties that own and operate the infrastructure, believe me. But when you look at the safe systems approach, all of those elements are there, along with more enforcement and along with better emergency response. So what are we working on? We're working on an approach that shifts responsibility from the user to the designer. We're working at the elimination level. We find that to be the most broadly effective, providing the greatest return over the long run. And there's some things that we're doing as an agency that I'm hoping will show change over time. We're managing kinetic energy by managing speed and doing things where it is appropriate to reduce speeds. Would that they could be enforced. We're managing the mass difference between the different objects, some of them living, some of them inanimate, that operate in our space. And we're managing crash angles. The mantra at WashDOT is when in doubt, roundabout. Roundabouts are reducing crashes at amazing rates. We are looking at equity as we work in this space. Pedestrians and bicyclists are 22% of all the deaths in Washington State, but they're not 22% the travelers, at least as we measure them. I'm sure if you think about how you got here today, you probably walked, but far above their mode share. There are a disproportionate number of the fatals and serious injuries. And when you look at census block groups that have people of color in them, 24% of the state, but 33% of the fatals. When you look at low income communities, 44% of the state, 51% of the fatals. We can't address active transportation and transportation safety without addressing safety, because everyone in Washington State deserves to get home at the end of the day. We do complete streets. Please, that's great. I used to be the director of the National Complete Streets Coalition, and when I was director, I could not get a meeting with AASHTO. It's been a few years, but I could not get them to meet with me. Now I'm the president of AASHTO, and the National Complete Streets Steering Committee had its last meeting at AASHTO headquarters in Washington, D.C. Complete Streets has achieved the mainstream. Complete Streets is state law in Washington State. It applies to transportation projects in our state valued at $500,000 or more that started after July 1 of 2022. Now, there's very little I do that costs less than $500,000. This speech costs less than $500,000, but most of what I do is a little bit more expensive. And Complete Streets for us is about filling the gaps. Network connectivity, if you want people to shift their modes, network connectivity is essential. When I was running the MPO in Missoula, Montana, which included our Missoula in Motion program, award-winning TDM program, we had great bicycle network until you got to the bridges across the river that were owned by the DOT, and there weren't any bike lanes on those bridges because the travel lanes had to be a certain width, blah, 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 blah. That was a problem. People didn't ride their bike because why ride your bike and have that minute of terror as you go across the bridge? They fixed that in Montana, at least in Missoula. Those bridges have been rebuilt and reconfigured, and the network is complete. We have to do community planning and engagement. When Complete Streets came on board and it was law, my team was freaking out, and I said, look, we are not the Oprah of Complete Streets. You get a sidewalk, and you get a sidewalk, and you get a bike lane. That wasn't what it was about. It was about making investment to make plans come true. It's about what's happening on our state routes. It's about what's happening with our local partners. It's about what's happening in our low income and overburdened communities. So we have a screening process. All projects over 500 grand. So, hey, Mr. or Ms. Project Manager, congratulations on your new assignment. You have a $500,000 project, Complete Streets. So is it in an incorporated city or other population center? Okay, now you have to ask 3 questions. We have an award-winning active transportation plan for the state of Washington. Is there a gap identified in that plan that is within your project limits? If there's a gap, fill the gap. Secondly, if there's no gap in the state plan, you have to reach out to your local partner and find out if they have a plan, and if that plan identifies a gap in the active transportation system within your project boundaries, congratulations, filling that gap is a part of your job. The third thing you have to do, there's no state plan, there's no local plan, are you in an overburdened community? A community that may have not had the wherewithal, either financial or political, to develop an active transportation plan. If that's the case, meet with the community, identify the needs, and meet those needs. If you don't have those 3 criteria, then go ahead and build your project. You don't need to worry about Complete Streets. We've done that work. It's going to be about half of our projects, and it'll be more and more of our projects depending on the extent to which the legislature funds our asset management program and our need for a state of good repair, because all of our paving jobs are $500,000 and over, and they will incorporate Complete Streets if appropriate. Now, folks in Washington State are like, this is the law, that project happening this summer, there better be some sidewalks on it. They have to understand that it's projects that started in 2022, and a lot of them started before that. So, you know, perfect and getting better every day, I guess, would be what we're trying to be. So what do complete streets look like? It is not a design prescription. A complete street is not a road diet, although a road diet is a complete street. I live, when I'm at home at my little house in McCall, Idaho, I live on a 24-foot wide asphalt street with no sidewalks or anything like that. It is a perfectly adequate street for the volumes and the speeds and the rest. It doesn't need a sidewalk and a separated bike lane. One size doesn't fit all. They all need to be evaluated in their own contexts, but it can include a lot of things. And one of the things that we're realizing is we need physical barriers between people walking and people biking and people driving cars and trucks, particularly as volumes happen. The other thing complete streets can be is a prescription in terms of speed limits and the like. So we're excited about it being law in Washington State. I'm excited about it becoming law in more states. AASHTO does take complete streets calls anymore. They will have a meeting. The Congress has recognized it. I would encourage you to embrace it as well. We also have convened a state injury minimization speed management policy and guidelines work group. I have no idea what the acronym is for that, but they've been doing some great stuff. We've adopted and we are implementing an approach to injury minimization as we set speed limits. We're using a safe systems approach to identify and prioritize the improvements we make on the system, and we're employing some roadway design treatments that should help us achieve target speeds and our safety goals. Some stuff that's happening. Aurora Avenue is a place where we have a lot of fatalities, and there is more and more investment happening there. The before and after at 92nd, there were 6 crashes in 3 years prior to a project that we did with SDOT. No crashes in the 16 months since. In that segment of Aurora, a 26% drop in all crashes and a 47% drop in injury crashes. So we've only got 53% of the way to go, but it's progress. Here's, again, when in doubt, roundabout. We replaced a signal with a roundabout, 85% reduction in crashes and a 95% reduction in injury. You can see the before and afters. When we go into a community that has not experienced the joy of a roundabout, it's usually a knockdown, drag out fight. And then when we build it, they embrace it and they want the next one and the next one and the next one after that. So look at a roundabout. It could very well be the solution to one of your problems. Here's a great big one down by the Port of Tacoma where we replaced a signal with the roundabout. It's been open a little over a year. 20% increase in volumes, 40% trucks in the peak hour. It is a busy, busy, busy place to be. We've had no serious injuries, knock on wood, since we opened it. And it's moving the nation's economy while keeping people safe. So we talked about automated speed enforcement. Looking forward, we have our annual worker memorial next Tuesday morning. The chief and I will be there. It's my toughest day of the year. I meet with the families of the 60 DOT employees who have been killed on the job, most of them killed in construction work zones. But hopefully the governor will be there signing Senate Bill 5272 into law. So pivoting to state of good repair, again, as we address our system's lack of good repair, we get to incorporate safe systems and complete streets into our solutions, but potholes and the like are a cause of crashes and need to be addressed. When I came on board as the secretary, nobody knew how much our system was worth, what we should be investing in it, what we are actually investing in it, and what the gap is. We now know that we own and operate $200 billion worth of stuff for the people of the state of Washington. Roads, bridges, ferries, trains, and equipment and facilities. You add all of that up, $200 billion. We should be spending about $2.1 billion a year. The legislature has invested again and again, and we've now moved up to where we are actually spending $1.2 billion, which means every year, $830 million worth of needs on the system are not met. They're punted to the future. It's kind of like, you know, the roof needs repairing and the water heater's not working, but boy, that home theater looks good, huh? Let's add a room to the house, and we'll buy a pickup truck, and we'll just give the roofing guys one of those blue tarps, and they'll take care of it, you know. We invest a lot of money in transportation. We need to invest more and more of it in managing what we already own in a state of good repair. The argument for adding to the system is quite often that the economy needs it. Our economy doesn't run on the infrastructure we wish we had. Our economy runs on the infrastructure that's there in place today, and you cannot take that infrastructure for granted. Our ports do great work, but if I have to load limit bridges if I have to load limit one bridge on Interstate 90 from the Idaho border to the Port of Seattle and Tacoma, all of a sudden every truck that travels on that highway can't be fully loaded, and that is an economic consequence that I do not want to have to be the one to ever do to this state. So we need to make these investments. The nice thing about this chart, I present it to the legislature and the governor every year. They're very annoyed when I do. They recognize the problem, but they also recognize that it's a big dollar item. When I first got started with this, we were spending about 1/3 of what we should spend. And with the most recent bill, Move Ahead Washington, we're now up over 50%. So I'm going to keep pushing, and we'll see where it goes. Why invest? Here's where we're at right now. We have almost 10,000 miles of pavement due or past due for improvement. 10,000 due and past due, we're paving 1,000. We have 50 bridges that need replacement, we're replacing 4. We have 107 bridges that need painting, we're painting 3. We have 150 bridge decks due for repair, we're repairing 24, and on and on and on. It is a glide path to failure, and it also creates a very unsafe situation. If you're driving or walking or biking on one of these facilities in the rain, in the dark, in the snow, what have you, it adds certainly to your being unsafe. We're doing the biggest preservation project in recent memory, starting this spring. Darn, you missed it. But we are rebuilding I-5 through downtown Seattle. Actually starting at South Lake Union and going north, it's about 8 miles of work. Completely rebuilding the pavement. It's going to take 4 or 5 years. It's going to have a tremendous impact on traffic. We're going to be inconveniencing a lot of people, but we inconvenience a lot of people now when an expansion joint fails or a pothole appears in a bridge and we have to shut traffic down to make an emergency repair. This inconvenience will be scheduled and noticed to everybody. There will still be a few surprised people, no doubt, but there's a lot going on. If you look at the central Puget Sound, the 3 counties where a lot of Washingtonians live, we are rebuilding Interstate 5 through Seattle. We are building Interstate 405 through Bellevue and Redmond and Kirkland. We're rebuilding 520 through Bellevue and Seattle. We're rebuilding I-90. We're rebuilding it all. And we have to work really hard to make sure that we're safely able to move the state's economy and the state's people on the system as we rebuild the system. It's kind of like switching engines on a moving bus. It's complicated. And if you don't live in the 3-county area, believe me, we've got something coming to inconvenience you too, wherever you do live. And we need to be smart about what we do, and this is the third part of resilience. We need to get more out of what we have. I had a constituent when I was first appointed that said, hey, congratulations on your appointment. I noticed the speed limit signs on I-5 say 60 miles an hour. I have never been able to drive 60 miles an hour on I-5 through downtown Seattle. Your agency is a colossal failure. So, well, thank you for that, sir. I asked the team to be able for everybody that lived there at the time to drive 60 miles an hour anytime they wanted. All we had to do was add 4 lanes to I-5 through downtown Seattle in each direction. That's not going to happen. We don't have the resources to do that. So solving congestion by adding capacity is impossible. It's financially impossible. If we had the money, we don't have the land. Do we take out the medical community or do we take out the downtown to add 8 lanes to Seattle? We don't have the airshed. We don't have the watershed. There are all kinds of reasons why something like that is not going to happen. That is not to say that there aren't places in the United States and even in the great state of Washington where highway expansion makes sense. But it should be the last tool in our toolbox. What we need to do first is get more out of what we already have. Because as I said, we have $200 billion worth of it. So what are we doing in terms of managing and operating our system to get more throughput? What are we doing in terms of managing demand to move people off of some parts of our system so that the people that need it have access to it? And that has to be done safely. And then what are we doing to apply technology to make all of that work? I get calls on a regular basis. Why are you letting buses into the HOV lane, or why are they on the shoulder? They're in my way. I'm trying to get to work. When you look at the traffic coming south from Snohomish County into Seattle on any given morning, buses are 2% of the traffic. They're carrying 34% of the people. I'd like to have twice the buses. My goodness, if they were carrying 2/3 of the people, look at all the space that would be available for people who need to use the road or who choose to use the road. Look at all that space that would be available for our economy to move on the road. So we are looking at expanding our system, getting more out of what we have, but expanding it as well. We need to start at different scales. At a neighborhood scale, we've talked about complete streets. Let's do it. Let's make sure that everyone has options for how they get around. Let's make sure that we're meeting local needs for preservation. At a regional scale, we're investing hugely in public transportation and active transportation. We need to do more about moving people and goods safely, not just more vehicles. And that at a mega regional scale, we are looking at what is the future of Interstate 5. Do we build ultra high-speed ground transportation between Portland and Vancouver, BC? And what do we do about the growth in aviation and our limited ability to address that with our existing airports? We were studying those in their little modal silos. We've brought them together. We're linking that effort and doing the work at scale. Talk a little bit about land use and transportation. We need to integrate the two, and you in the safety space need to be a part of this. It's not just about affordable housing and about equitable transportation. It's about the two of them together and making it safe and easy to shift short trips to walking and biking, embracing telecommunity as a tool, and looking at new partnerships. When you look at VMT, and if you think about all the crashes that we have, what's the one thing they all have in common? Cars. So reducing VMT is a huge mission given us by our legislature. Look at the strategies to reduce VMT that are out there, and look at what land use does in terms of the potential impact. This is all about zoning, driving transportation needs. I'm a planner. I learned all about Euclidean zoning. It ain't a Greek philosopher. It's a town in Ohio, Euclid, that is known for its zoning ordinance and for its polka museum. So if you ever get to Euclid, check it out. Euclidean zoning, basically, it was a Supreme Court case that said it's legal for a city to zone land and limit uses. And so a bunch of communities in the country have Euclidean zoning. Herbert Hoover's Department of Commerce promulgated the regulation. So if your community has A, B, C, and D zones, thank President Hoover. But when you look at what that has resulted in, I'll pick on Spokane because I like picking on Spokane, but 60% of the land in Spokane is reserved exclusively for single-family houses. So the only thing you can build on 60% of the land area of Spokane is a single-family home. At the same time, their multifamily housing has a 3.4% vacancy rate, which means they're basically full. And when you think about the population able to afford a single-family home in Spokane, it's 26% of the population. So what the city has done, I don't think it was their intention, but what the city has done with their zoning is walled off 60% of their land area from 75% of their population. You know, that's the stuff of revolution, folks. And what happens is when you can't afford to live in Spokane, you live out in the county and you drive. And when you live out in the county and drive, you add to our VMT. And when you look at our incident response team, half of our responses are mechanical breakdowns. People that couldn't afford to live in the city, move into the country, now they're not able to afford to keep their car up for the commute they have to make back and forth. The people who are really falling out of the bottom of the housing market, and it's not unique to Spokane, it's not unique to Washington State, but communities, states that have thriving economies and hot housing markets, it's becoming more and more and more expensive to keep a roof over your head, and more people are falling out of the bottom. They simply can't afford it. Where someone making a minimum wage used to be able to rent an apartment, you know, an apartment here in Seattle can cost you $1,500, $2,000 a month for a studio, you know, and your barista is not going to be able to swing that. So what we found here in Washington State is more and more people living in our right-of-way. And the chief and I and the Department of Commerce, we've been working really hard on this the last 18 months or so. Now, there have been homeless people in rights-of-way since rights-of-way were created. Homeless people in the right-of-ways in the Bible. You know, it's been around for a while, but the current housing market and then the pandemic really made it obvious to a lot of folks. And we started a right-of-way safety initiative. After the pandemic, when it became safe to move around again, mayors all around the state told their chiefs of police to get those people out of downtown, get them out of the parks, get them away from our schools. They pushed them all to our right-of-way. And the governor wanted the chief and I to push them all back downtown. And then they'd be pushed back out to our right-of-way, and then back downtown, and then out to our right-of-way. I said, you know, Governor, as a taxpayer, that's inefficient and ineffective. As a human being, that's inhumane to play homeless whack-a-mole with these people. The Gov got it, and he got busy, and he came up with the concept that we've been implementing, which is working with the people living homeless in our right-of-way, not to move them out of the right-of-way, but to solve their specific problem, get them back up on their feet, and get them back into society meet whatever need they have. And so we will identify a camp that we are going to resolve, and we will go into that camp and identify who is there, limit the camp to the people that are there at the time we start doing the resolving so nobody else can come in, identify what their specific needs are, put a package together that meets those needs, offer that package to those individuals, and when they accept those offers and we move them out, we go in and clean it up, and we make sure that no one ever comes back. When they don't accept our offer, we say, well, that's your right, sir or ma'am, but you can't stay here. As a result of that, we have 13 sites cleared or in progress. Some really, really tough places have been resolved. And the people that are moving out of those sites are staying with the program, which is a good thing. It's early days. We've only been working on this about 9 months, but it appears to be working, and we will be doing more and more of that as our legislature provides the resources. The governor is pushing really hard for big money for housing. The mayor of Seattle, Bruce Harrell, good man, is pushing really hard for more money for housing, because the solution, solution for homelessness, the simplistic way to talk about it is housing, but it's housing and the services that people need, because the folks that there are the young people that just want to party, yeah, but that's not the homeless population. A third of the people out there have one or more jobs. They're coming home from work to live under a washed-out bridge. A great number of them are senior citizens. You know, there are a couple, one of the two passes away, the other one doesn't have the wherewithal to finish off that mortgage they've been paying on for 29.5 years or to pay rent on the apartment. They get evicted. And we've got 60, 70, 80-year-old seniors, men and women, living under DOT bridges. We have the mentally ill. We have people that are addicted to substances that they originally became addicted to because they got hurt on the job and they were prescribed something that got them hooked. It's a mixed bag of folks, but you know, there but for the grace of God are all of us. And that's the approach that we take to solving this problem. So, concluding my comments, thank you for bearing with me. The jokes were awful, I apologize for that, but we need to emphasize resilience in everything that we do. We really are focusing on safe systems. As we do that, we need to accommodate all people in all modes. We are not a Department of Highways, we are a Department of Transportation. We need to have equitable and inclusive policy and program decisions. We had to adapt to the new normal. We, here in the United States, we manage a 21st century economy on a 19th century agrarian calendar. I mean, it's just, you know, the daylight savings thing, the problems that we have with weekends on our system. We need to adapt to the new normal in the modern work environment. We need to align all of our policies, and we need to continue to be flexible and adaptable. So thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do. Stay safe.
Thank you, Secretary Millar. That was a fantastic outline that you gave us, and the leadership that you have, not only the knowledge and the experience that you have, but the insight that brings is going to make a big difference, and we appreciate it. On a beautiful evening in 1997, David Jones and his wife Martha experienced the worst nightmare that parents can ever encounter. Their 13-year-old son, Cooper, was an aspiring bicycle racer, and he was struck from behind by a motor vehicle while competing in a sanctioned event with his club. In David's own words, quote, "No matter how hard you try, the words don't exist to describe what that was like." His death and the aftermath and reaction made us promise that what happened to him would not be forgotten, and telling his story helped to change the way people thought about safety. Now, here to tell us in his own words his story about their beloved son, Cooper, and how he and Martha are changing laws to save lives is David Jones. Welcome, David.
Boy, that's a tough act to follow, Roger, but I'll do my best to keep it short here. So clearly the reason I'm here is because this guy isn't here. It's hard to describe him in few words. He was smart and funny and creative and self-reliant, independent, and he had big dreams. He wanted to be a bike racer. He had, instead of having posters of football players or basketball players in his room, he had posters of bike racers. He was an honor student and a Boy Scout. He was the senior patrol leader of his Boy Scout troop. He had a list in his top drawer of all the things he wanted to accomplish. He wanted to go to college. He wanted to be a pilot. He wanted to be a bike racer. But he was also a runner and a skier and weirdly enough, a crack shot. And he didn't want to go. He knew he was going to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal. Just knew it was going to happen. So to that end, on June 24th, 1997, he went out to feed the need, the need for speed. It was a perfect day, perfect day. For those of you who live in areas where there's humidity, and I grew up in one of those areas, it's hard to imagine how perfect a day like this in an arid area like Eastern Washington is. There's no haze, it's crystal clear, it's beautiful, there's not a cloud in the sky. You're 13 years old, you're out of school for 2 weeks, your sister's at camp. I mean, it can't get any better than that. Martha and I were both at work, so he got to go on his own with a neighbor who was also a racer. I mean, perfect, the perfect scenario. So this was a time trial. It was held on a stretch of road that was used in the 84 and 88 Olympic trials. It's perfect for that. It's flat. There are no curves, there's no hills, there's no trees, there's nothing in the way. And again, this was a perfect day, June 24th. It's just past the longest day of the year, so tons of daylight. So this is the road. And the way the event was structured, there were controls at both ends, so drivers that entered, the road couldn't be closed, but all the event had permits, and the entrance to the course at both ends was closed, so that when a driver approached, they were stopped and warned that there would be riders on the road ahead of them, and to watch out for them and be careful. So Cooper was probably about 2.5, 3 miles down the road when the driver, who had been through this control point, passed several other riders and somehow managed to hit him. Probably 55, 60 miles an hour. This is a very rural road, so no one really saw it happen. So it's unclear exactly what happened, other than when she hit him, it went underneath the bike and he went over the top of her hood, and you can see the impact of where his head hit the windshield of her car. And again, no one can really explain this, but rather than being thrown free, something about the way she stopped the car meant that he slid off the hood, and then she ran over him and pinned him under the car. So again, no traffic on this road. It's 1997. Very few people, if any, have cell phones. So when people came across her car stopped, it took a while to figure out what had happened. She didn't know. The driver didn't know. And his bike was off the side of the road. No one could see that. So it took a little while to figure out that he was actually under the car. By the time someone had gone back to the start, where there was actually a fire station and EMTs, and they got someone to jack the car up and got him out from under the car, and the helicopter came and they intubated him and flew him to the hospital. I was at work already. Martha was getting ready to go to work. We both worked at one of the hospitals in town. I worked at one, she worked at the other. I got the phone call from one of the officials of the race, who happened to also be one of the nurse managers of one of the ICUs at the hospital where I worked. And she could call me because I had one of the work phones. And she told me I had to come right now. But she wouldn't tell me what happened. So I knew it was bad. So I got home, I got Martha, we went to the hospital just in time to see him brought down from the helipad. He went to surgery. His neurosurgeon, in fact, was one of the riders that was with him that night. Spent 7 days in the ICU, where his condition never improved and, in fact, deteriorated every day. And on the 8th day, we had to make that decision that no one wants to make. And so we took him off life support. And we promised him that we just couldn't be for nothing. It just wasn't going to go without any reaction at all. And that commitment was strengthened kind of in many ways by the reaction to what happened. One of the things that happened was the eastern region of the WashDOT banned all types of bicycling events from highways in the state. And the other thing that happened is that basically this driver, who was without a doubt careless and negligent and caused a death, basically got a traffic ticket, the fine for which was $250. And at the time, that was less than the fine for parking in a handicapped parking space. That's still not acceptable to me. And it's still the case. There was another 13-year-old that was killed in the state of Washington just a few months ago under somewhat similar circumstances, crossing in a crosswalk, and one lane of traffic stopped, the other didn't. But because the driver was not impaired and didn't have any other characteristics, same thing happened. That to us was unacceptable, and we felt like you just have to do something about that. So with the help of advocates in the state and the organization that was the precursor to Washington Bikes, we introduced legislation in 1998 that resulted in the Cooper-Jones Act, which created a commission at the Traffic Safety Commission that would focus on bicycle and pedestrian safety. And it also created a provision where a driver who was the at-fault driver in a fatality or a serious injury accident would be referred to the Department of Licensing to be retested. It seemed like the least you could do would be to have them be retested and potentially be sent, undergo some sort of re-education or retraining or whatever. It was a bill that one legislature said they'd never seen a bill that had died so many times and brought back to life. It was passed in the last hour of the last day of the session by the sponsor. One of the sponsors kept the session open and would not allow them to leave until they voted on it. In many ways, it's kind of a minor achievement, except that I think the biggest thing that it did was it opened the door to a wider discussion of safety for vulnerable users in the state, and began to make things move in a more positive direction. A few years later, we were able to get the legislature to agree to allow customized license plates that would help fund bicycling education and bicycling in general, and that money from those license plates went to Cascade Bicycle Club, which operates a lot of educational programs and runs lots of events that promote cycling. And then in 2019, the legislature combined our group at the Traffic Safety Commission with a pedestrian group to create an active transportation council that would examine data, examine crash data, examine fatalities, and make recommendations to the legislature. And we've been doing reasonably well in that regard. Already mentioned was driver's ed. That was one of our recommendations. The ability for some localities to manage speed limits on their own. Ability for municipalities to put more speed cameras in more places, school zones, hospital zones, parks, that kind of thing. Probably the thing that for me was maybe the most important is we were allowed to spend a lot of time thinking about what exactly does safety mean? We all use that word, right? what does it mean? And we started from the idea that it meant more than just not getting hit by a car, that there were different levels to this, or different aspects to it, different layers. To make it as simple as possible, there's like an individual level, community level, and a society level. And to be safe in all those levels requires concentration along all of them. And I'm going to make a statement now that's kind of not the opinion of the council, but my own. And that is that we have this environment for, I'd like to say mobility rather than transportation, this environment that we move around in. And it didn't come down on the mountain, from the mountain with Moses, well, maybe Robert Moses, but it came about because of decisions we made about how to build things and how to allocate resources and what our world looks like. We take it for granted that it is the way it is because it is, but it isn't. It's because of decisions that we've all made. And so if I was to say anything today, it would be that we need to make different decisions. And, you know, we're in March Madness, and we just had games here in Seattle last weekend. And all the coaches and players will tell you, you know, we had a dream. You know, you have to, before you can do it, you have to dream it. So if I were to say anything to you today, I would say just dream it and dream big. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dave and Martha, for being here with us. And you know, we can look at the statistics and that we're seeing every day, and it doesn't have the same level of engagement, the same level of meaning to us as what you did just provide. And I know it's hard. A lot of us here have had personal tragedies, but thank you so much for doing that. As traffic safety professionals, we are dedicated to carrying out the current administration's goals to eradicating crashes and the resulting injuries and fatalities. And we have to look at the future, and the future of safer roads and stronger communities, and we have to look to our youth. And those are the people who are going to take our place as we improve this society. And I'm pleased to announce today that we have 35 new soldiers joining us. I'd like to ask the 2023 Lifesavers Traffic Safety Scholars to stand and be recognized. These young people whose names and schools are listed in our program are really our future. Yesterday afternoon, the scholars learned about the traffic safety career opportunities that are available from a panel of young professionals, and then they had a networking reception with federal and state and NGO leaders about that future. So if you get a chance over the next couple of days and you see one of these young people who are our future, please stop and talk with them, chat with them, tell them about what you do, and share your contact information with them. It can really make a difference. These young people are definitely the future of safer roads. So thank you to them for coming. Okay, just as we wrap up, if you haven't already done so, please download the Lifesavers mobile app. It gives you access to the complete conference program. It provides event alerts. It provides the opportunity to evaluate workshops. You can see on your screen that there's an evaluation slide. You're going to see that frequently over the next few days. Please evaluate the speakers and let us know if we're doing a good job. Finally, whether you are a new or returning Lifesavers participant, we're glad that you're here, and we hope that you have a great conference. It's so important that we're all here today to learn about how we can reverse these trends that I talked to you about earlier. Even if you're not a moderator or presenter, please get involved in the conversation. Ask questions, share your message, share your experiences. We're all here together, and that's how we're going to make a difference. I encourage you also to say hello to the Lifesavers Planning Committee. I'm a member. They're wearing these nice little pins like this or ribbons like that. And if you see one of them, these are some hardworking folks that put in hours every month, every week, sometimes even every day. So many hours of volunteer time. These people have real jobs, but they're sharing their expertise and their passion with you. So please say hello to them. And if you have any questions about the mobile app, the people wearing the blue sweaters that are out by the registration booth can help you with that. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful conference. Welcome to Lifesavers.